Are we our thoughts? Let's get started inspecting the mind. And let's start with the simple interrogation of whether we are our thoughts. This is an eyes open exercise. So put your earbuds in, put down your phone, and I find this best performed looking out into nature. As you're looking out, choose something to rest your attention on. It's okay if you observe that your attention bounces around a couple objects before finding a landing spot for this exercise. It doesn't matter what you're looking at, as the object in the visual field is not the point of this exercise. As you rest your gaze on the object, hopefully in the center of the visual field, I want you to notice any sounds arising. Notice the pressure in the bottom of your feet. Notice any pressure in your head. Notice what it feels like to be a subject over here, observing the object over there. Let's recognize for a moment how odd it is to go through the inspection of whether we are our thoughts. Now maybe you came into this exercise with a posture, of course I'm my thoughts. I'm associated with my brain, and my thoughts are in my brain. That's totally fine to come in with that stance, because it's a perfectly normal stance, and it's actually very helpful in navigating life. But as we look out at the object in the visual field, let's spend a couple minutes focusing our attention on what we actually experience right now in this moment. Let's actually interrogate our experience without having to recall any anatomy lessons or concepts. So as you look at the object, I want you to think the thought, I'm right here. Don't say it out loud, just think it. As you think the thought, recognize if there is more of an auditory nature to the thought, a visual nature, any sensory components that are felt, etc. Think it again. I'm right here. We're going to think this a couple times, and we're going to inspect it in different ways. Let's now notice if the thought lingers and has a waning residual to the thought, similar to a bell sound trailing off. I'm right here. As you continue looking at the object in the visual field, let's really concentrate and see if you can notice the moment that any residual of the thought is completely gone. I'm right here. Now let me ask you, have you ever focused attention on what your thoughts sound like? As you think the thought, focus attention on if the thought sounds exactly like your actual voice, or if there are any differences to be noticed. I'm right here. Now, we're going to inspect what's left to experience at the moment any residual of the thought is gone. As you continue to look at the object in the middle of your visual field, think the thought, I'm right here. Okay, hopefully you were able to hear the thought, experience the thought, and clearly know when it was present and when it completely subsided. Pretty easy exercise, right? So let me ask some questions, and then you can inspect this more on your own. I have to start with the question, are you that thought? Most people would start with a stance that they are their thoughts. But let me ask you a very straightforward question. When the thought was gone, were you still present? The reason this question is so important is that there's a huge difference in being something and being aware of something. Let's do it again and see if you are the thought or if you're aware of the thought. I'm right here. When the thought subsided, did you feel exactly like the thought, or was there a sense that you were in some way adjacent to the thought, and that when it subsided, it was clear that it was not you? Does that make sense? Think the thought again and see what you observe. I'm right here. Similar to our exercise, evaluating our hands on our knees and our hands on the couch, we need to have the same curiosity, coupled with a certain level of concentration, when directing our attention towards our experience of thoughts. I want to explain my experience and see if yours is in any way similar. As I look out the window at a tree branch swaying in the wind, my thought, I'm right here, is more or less auditory. My experience is basically of hearing it. Clearly, I don't hear it with my ears, but the recognition is somehow similar. Even though I'm familiar to this auditory thought, I honestly can't determine, one way or the other, if the thought sounds the same as my voice I hear when I speak. I find that odd. As I focus on the thought, it's quite recognizable at first. The thought does not vanish right after it occurs. There's a bit of a residual, similar to a bell ring that wanes over a few seconds. When the thought is completely gone, it's clear to me that attention has returned to the branch on the tree in the visual scene. I then notice attention bounces to a sound that is recognized, and then back to the branch. And then it moves to some sensations in my back for a moment, as well as subsequent thoughts that are coming and going. And this is all just in a few seconds' time. Experience is still here, even in the absence of that thought. I know this might seem uninteresting and possibly even a silly recognition at first, but it might have become clear that even though the thought was gone, you were not gone with the thought. You are something other than the thought. Does that make sense? My hope is that you can at least start chipping away at a common intuition that you are your thoughts. Hopefully, this exercise revealed the possibility that thoughts come and go. They're recognized, but you are not your thoughts. You are aware of them. With progression, we will start to recognize that we are no more our thoughts than we are any other object that our attention bounced to in this exercise. That will come later. This week, play with this simple exercise intermittently. As you're sitting or walking, whether you're eating, recognize a thought that comes up. You can even use the thought that we used, I'm right here. See if you can begin chipping away at a common intuition that we are our thoughts. And see if you can begin strengthening the actual fact that we are instead aware of them. If you can start doing that, you might begin to recognize, even for a moment, how experience changes when recognized as awareness. Maybe.